Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Joe Theodore, and it's an honor to be here with you today. So let's continue on in my moon sign series. Gemini moon is today. Now, if you've been following me since I started this channel a couple of months ago, you probably have heard me say many times that I am in fact a Gemini moon. And I know some of you who follow me are Gemini moons because we've joked in the comment section and we've gone back and forth discussing our Gemini ways from a moon perspective, which if you have already taken one of my classes, I have a pre-recorded teaching portal, hub, if you will. That's a part of Patreon. You do not need to be a member of Patreon, by the way, to purchase any of my pre-recorded classes. I'm building a library there of a lot of informative 90-minute plus classes. And then, of course, mini masterclass courses will be coming very soon. I actually am releasing one in a couple of days called Mapping the Soul, a multidimensional soul journey class. But I have a class called Transforming Your Life with Your Moon Sign. And when it comes to the moon, it is one of my most cherished things to talk about in astrology, because the big three, if you will, the moon, your rising, and your sun, are the big three for a reason. But the moon, my friends, is your mind. The moon is your emotional system. The moon is how you process information. The moon is how you innately are. You will never be able to change your moon, ever. You can pretend to be a different rising sign, right? You can choose different destinies and different frequencies, going against maybe whatever your sun sign nature is. But your moon will always bring you to your knees if you are lying to yourself. Yes, do our moon signs have shadows, which we need to work on and work with? Yes, absolutely. But our moon signs are also extremely important to use in its fullest capacity, to embrace its light, the gifts that the moon you were chosen to be born with, you need in order to thrive in this world, and to make you feel safe, and to make you feel in balance. The moon is all about balance. It's about emotional and mental regulation. Without the moon on our earth, a part of our earth, we wouldn't have the tides. We would not have many particular things that are needed for life to be in homeostasis. And the moon in our birth charts is exactly the same. The moon provides us the frequency, whatever your zodiac sign is, whatever that represents. It reveals to you the frequency that you are, that you need often, and that you need not stray from. Now, as a Gemini moon, I could tell you right now, I've had my spiritual awakening stages years ago. When you first have a massive kind of psychic experience, which led me on my intuitive and psychic development journey, and then learning all types of divination arts and shamanic arts, just to discover and to learn about, these gifts, right? But in reality, I've always been a very analytical person. I've always been someone who loves to learn and to be curious about a billion different things. I've always loved to experiment and, just been curious about multiple different dimensions of life. And even what I just said about my spiritual journey, when I had an awakening, a massive psychic awakening, even what I just said before is a proof of my Gemini moon energy. I needed to explore all spiritual traditions. I needed to try and taste everything to see what ultimately is best for me. And in the end, I realized that there is no best for me, that I'm just innately someone who loves to analyze, learn, and experience on my own behalf. And allowing myself to change perspectives and to change belief systems even throughout my life, depending on what new information and new revelation is brought to me. I've tried to just strictly stick on a meditative path where, I was very heavily into Buddhism at one point. And I still love Buddhism. The philosophy is a beautiful one. And meditation, the understanding of the true nature of, the deepest elements of samadhi, the deepest layers of sinking into our consciousness, the true nature of our being. There is massive truth there, ultimate truth, source consciousness truth. But I soon realized that becoming a Buddhist or someone who should be dedicating his life to really learning all types of meditation, and even at one point I thought about teaching, being a very kind of meditative teacher. This was years ago, and I was also still very much exploring spiritual traditions, divination arts, starting to get my beginning understandings in astrology, which is massive for Gemini energy, being able to analyze charts and figure everything out. So I soon realized, instead of hanging out with all of my Pisces friends who were all into the meditation, because it's amazing, half the people I met in the serious meditative world, a lot of them had massive amounts of Pisces energy. Whether they were moons or whether they were suns or whether they just had like a stellium, generally speaking, somewhere in Pisces. And when I learned more about astrology, I soon realized, I can't negate my mind, because in Buddhist meditation and meditation, generally speaking, it's about letting go of the ego, relinquishing thought, and at the truest sense of spiritual enlightenment and revelation, that is true. Thought is a hindrance, because consciousness, which births the thought, is actually potentially one aspect of the Holy Spirit, of God, of the Great Spirit. The animation of experience itself all begins with consciousness. And theoretically and philosophically, I'm very enlightened, I guess you can say, in that way. I'm not saying it in a spiritual enlightenment way, but just enlightened in mind. That it's a truth. But my truth as a person with a Gemini moon is that negating my thoughts, wanting to relinquish my ego, wanting to, as the Buddhists would say, seek no more. There should be nothing you should desire in this world. But the thing is I'm not here in this lifetime to relinquish thought. I'm not here in this lifetime to follow a Buddhist path, for example, where, denying thought and desire and attachment, is part of some people's spiritual path. But for me, I'm here to learn. I'm here to speak. I'm here to analyze and critique. I'm here to socialize. I'm here to bring people together and to share things that I learn and love. And that is something that I learned when I embrace this moon energy, this Gemini moon energy of mercurial curiosity and connection and, changeable ways of speaking and interacting in the world. I've had many different career paths actually, until I've really kind of more embraced my philosophical and spiritual pursuits and my shamanic pursuits, but still in this wheelhouse of spirituality and philosophy that I am very much in tune with, and astrology. There's so much room for change, and there's so much room for new interpretation. Every birth chart I read from one of you lovely clients out there, it's a brand new dimension for me to explore. My Gemini moon needs the duality of life. The Gemini twins, the duality of life. It embraces duality. It finds the truth within the core of duality, but it embraces all the different flavors of the rainbow. So it needs change. It needs spontaneity. I need change and spontaneity, but not in a physical materiality sense necessarily, because actually I'm a pretty simple, minimalist kind of guy. I've learned that the less I have materially speaking, the less stressed I am. So I'm someone who's very simple at his core. I think for me, the need for change and spontaneity is more in the mental and the intellectual for me. And there's a lot of other placements in my chart that signify that. For example, I have a stellium in my ninth house, right? So for me, the ninth house is the house of higher learning, the house of religion, spirituality, philosophy, higher education, astrology. I've always been very obsessed and interested in foreign cultures. And most of my dearest friends throughout my life, I met in New York City because I'm from New Jersey. And I've been in and out of New York City my whole life for various different reasons, still to this day. And most of my dearest friends have always been from another country. I've always have made connections in the deepest of ways to people that are not from where I'm from, right? And not New Jersey, just generally speaking, America, So for me, my Gemini moon needs the change and spontaneity and flavors of life. For me, I've always been a seeker of truth and knowledge, I think more than anything before, anything else. I've also been very good at counseling people, and I've always been someone who has been a magnet for other people's, worries, traumas. I think that's what led me to want to really help people in some way, shape, or form in this world, in this lifetime. Astrology is a beautiful way for me to practice my spiritual woo-woo-ness and my psychicness with a very honest and professional setting where I could be sort of like a psychologist type of figure. I've also have studied psychology. I've studied various forms of Western philosophy. I've done a lot of studying in my life. Even to this day, I study Western philosophy in my spare time. I will read old texts from some of the greatest Western philosophers that shaped post or like the medieval Christian era, thought. So for me, reading and learning and understanding all new dimensions of thought, of existence, is all my Gemini moon thrives on this, right? And people come to me, for, learning. People come to me for counsel and advice. Even before I decided to do any of this work, even as a teenager, I always seemed to attract someone who was going through a hard time, and I was always like there to just help them and say the right words at the right time, even if I wasn't even intending to. I always was good at being able to adapt to different groups of people. I could hang out with homies in the bad side of the neighborhood, and I had really good friends from all different class systems. I wasn't like rich or anything growing up, but I was able to vibe with the people who had nothing, and then also to have conversation with people I did know that had tons of money. And as I got older, going to different schools, that's another part of my journey. I don't know if any other Gemini moons out there. Did you change schools a lot? Did you move around a lot with your family? I do feel like sometimes that can play a role into the way we are developed as adults, where we are just so used to moving around a lot or moving from school to school, or having that kind of chaos be around us where we're observing this changeability constantly. Now, I would say that's maybe on the rarer side, because more than half of the time I think Gemini moons, that would be maybe more of a Gemini rising trait, but Gemini moons, our primary experience is how we are just innately pulsing, and how we innately process the world, and how we are innately good at, just naturally wanting to connect with others and being able to speak to people from all class systems, and, being able to, be open to learning from everyone and everything. And I'm sorry for making this video all about me, but this is the one moon video where I can honestly speak from experience, My big three is Scorpio rising, Gemini moon, and Leo sun. So kind of a interesting combination for me. And I have grown to be a late bloomer in maturity, I would say. Not maturity in wisdom as far as like how to, be an adult in the world, but kind of a late bloomer in regards to knowing who I am fully. Because Gemini moons, I have a tendency to be multiple personality-ish. It takes us a while maybe sometimes in life to realize who we really are and what our path should be, because we want to do many different things. We want to try on many different costumes and many different masks. We want to, maybe not have just one career in a world where you're supposed to laser focus in on just one thing. And what I soon realized in my life is that finding one job, if it has multiple dimensions to the one job with room for evolution and growth, such as astrology, it's a never-ending learning process. You're always learning. You're always working with a different birth chart. There's always a new way to talk about a transit. There's always something changing in the sky in the current here and now time-space reality with the astrology. So for me, one career path, or even though there is something else I do in my life that I would consider a career path, involving writing. It's just something that's not a part of this channel and this whole, business stuff of mine and my videos and my teaching as an astrologer. But I do have I have other things happening in my life that I'm also equally as passionate about, as far as maybe what many would call career. But astrology is a perfect example. After many, many, many years of trying to, I was an artist for a long time. I've always been a writer. I've done multiple things in the film industry. I did a lot in the film world and screenwriting before I, really embraced my spiritual, stuff, like I've mentioned so many times in my videos. And it took me a while to realize that I needed to really balance my spiritual belief, my gifts as an intuitive and a counselor, so to speak, a mystical wizard, shamanic psychologist, just to be a little funny right now, and to realize that my Gemini moon needed a balance of all of those things to kind of fulfill its desires every day. And to be okay with this change, to be okay with this mutability, because Gemini is mutable. So I think the one thing Gemini moons need to understand is to be okay with change, to embrace change, to not be afraid, to not, seem like you have to be on one track. I mean, we do have to worry about anxiety. Some of us, I believe we are diagnosed with ADD. Some of us go undiagnosed with ADD for most of our life. I know I probably have a touch of it to a degree. I think other parts of the shadow is being non-committal, having a hard time commit potentially to partners and even to just generally like career paths, or to commit to one way of thinking, just commitment, generally speaking, however that may translate. But all that means really is that you have not met the right career paths. You have not met the right people, the right partners, the right friends to be able to allow you to express your curiosities, changeabilities, and your need for spontaneity and change. Because there are people in this world that are meant to handle, people like us or people like the Gemini moon placement. And see, Gemini suns are different because they're supposed to grow into like a very social, they're innately not very Gemini, they're not very innately that, because everyone is innately the moon. And a Gemini sun would be someone who maybe has a hard time communicating, someone who maybe has a deep desire to be a writer or to communicate efficiently, but it takes time throughout their life for them to really understand that that is something they need to master, or they naturally, through fate and destiny, get guided into very Gemini type situations where they are, eventually, reborn and are born into their persona, because the sun is the persona we have to embody in order to achieve things. Like me and my Leo, right? I've always was shy, and my Scorpio rising doesn't help me wanting to be quiet and in the shadows, right? But for me, my big three is a perfect combination as I've gotten older, because I'm fulfilling a desire of wanting to help people, to be somewhat of a leader, to, be someone who can be courageous when I have to stand like on a podium, or be able to speak and, not be afraid to, kind of take charge of my life, and, to kind of be, an actor on a stage who wants to be seen. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I have always had a desire to be seen. That's why I was in the film business. That's why I was always a musician growing up. There was a desire to want to share something I'm passionate about. And I knew that the only way that that was ever going to happen is if I was able to take up some kind of a path or craft that could allow me to, kind of be seen, right? So I've always wanted my work to be seen. I've always wanted my passions to be translated to others. And, being able to embody your Leo confidently is important. So the very act of me making a video for you right now is my Leo sun being courageous to make videos and to put myself out there and to be passionate about what I'm talking about. My Gemini moon is allowing me to process all this information, to go through the years of learning and studying that never ends, to be very open and communicative with anyone I meet, and to be able to understand any one of your stories if I ever connect with you in a reading, and to just constantly be fluidly shape-shifting throughout any situation or discussion or text that I read, or group that I'm involved in, or place that I go visit. And then my Scorpio rising is pretty much the psychic in me, I would say. Even though my moon falls in the 8th house. So that's another reason probably for my deeply psychological inclinations and revelations involving why my mind is so attracted to psychology, philosophy, spirituality, the taboos of this world. I know there's more that I want to say. I have a paragraph here written down. Let me just read that. Moon in Gemini manifests itself by the need for changes and spontaneity. Safety lies in thinking about your feelings and sharing them with others. Yeah, there's some stuff in here I didn't talk about. You can be talkative and you speak skillfully with ease. This ability can be used in literature, journalism, or counseling. Those are just 3 small examples, guys. There's so much more Gemini moon is all about. You can correctly predict the mood of a person, but do not ignore the deeper emotional motives. So being very observant, analytical, being very heightened, alert, being on your toes, which can also produce a lot of anxiety. This is what I'm saying. A Gemini moon is constantly scanning their environment, sensing things, when they become a little bit more mature, at least, because, Gemini moons can be a little bit more playful and superficial, but eventually once they understand how to master their observation and their communication skills, they become extremely observant, extremely well equipped to know and pick up exactly what's going on all around them at all times. You have a good innate ability to keep a cool head, but beware, cold heart can discourage others. So because we can be so heady, right? Sometimes the mind and the emotions aren't always linked together. For me, I understand that I process emotion first with my mind before I have the time to really, feel it necessarily. Not all the time, because I do feel I have a lot of other placements in my birth chart that make me a very sensitive feeler. But the protection that I get from a Gemini moon sign for me is if I am faced with something that's very heavy around me, or if I'm dealing with someone that's dropping some very traumatic stuff on me, if I'm helping someone or whatever the case may be, I don't immediately get a guttural emotional reaction where I freak out or I get frozen because I'm in shock. For me, I'm in constant analytics. I'm processing. I'm trying to understand. And once I do understand, then I can decide how much of it I want to feel or not. So you have an innate ability to keep a cool head, but beware, cold heart can discourage others. Harmony of thinking and feeling is important. You have the ability to easily get acquainted with many people, but it is more difficult for you to maintain few solid friendships. So I've learned, generally speaking, that can be very true for many Gemini moons. For me, I've always have been really good at speaking to people, at social functions, this, that, and the other thing. But my Scorpio rising has always made me want to be more in the shadows and shy and a little bit distrustful at first in big social gatherings. But once I get myself moving around a room, or once I, get acquainted with who my entire class, like if back into my school days, at that point, I could be friends with everybody. Like I've never had bullies really. I've always been cool with almost everyone in all of my social settings once we get to know each other. I've never really had many enemies. So I have I've always had a very innate quality to be able to vibe well with everyone. And everyone kind of always knew that about me and resonated with me in that way. And that's always been a great, great thing. I've only had a couple of at periods of my life in chunks. I've only had 3 to 4 really solid friends, aside from, a girlfriend at the time, whenever I would date, someone. So I never had massive groups of friends. I wasn't friends with everybody all the time, but I was just able to get along with everybody all the time, depending on the situations. And I've always really depended on core groups of friends, but I could tell you right now, there have been large chunks of my life where I go without having, very close friends. And I really just sort of stay close with my family or, have a girlfriend, for example, and just the way life ebbs and flows, you don't always have solid core friends. It's just the way it's been in my past. So a Gemini moon, they would greatly benefit, and I could tell you from experience, from having really core, respectable, amazing, supportive friends. People that keep them grounded. That's very important for a Gemini moon, to stay grounded as well. So we can benefit from Earth moons to help us, to be honest. Taurus moons can help us a lot. And yeah, even some watery moons to kind of make our emotions, for our emotions to kind of be a little bit more active, Yeah. So anyway, guys, that's all I have for you. I do hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you did. Please let me know your experience with any Gemini moons you know. If you're a Gemini moon, of course, leave comments. And if there's anything you want to know about me, book a reading, or explore my teaching portals, link down below. All right, my friends, I will see you next time. Sending you so much love.